Welcome to the Strategic Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Macias, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Laura Burkhauser. Laura, it is great to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Laura, you are now the CEO of Descript. This is actually the platform that we're using right now, so my favorite.
We're using Descript right now, and you'll be using it later when you're editing this.
Exactly. Exactly. Laura, give us a little bit of your backstory, how you got to this point in your journey for people that don't know Descript and don't know essentially what it is besides a podcast editing platform.
Yeah, so Descript is a video editing platform, and video is weirdly enough, I have like now one of those careers where you could never have seen it from the beginning, but it makes a lot of sense, like looking back. And actually, video is really tied into how I got into product management. So I was working at a consulting firm, and we were starting to have the insight that I think now many companies are having, which is that creating video of some of our intellectual property, turning that into content and putting it out there into the world, in this case, in the form of an online learning platform, could be a really good top of funnel marketing decision or marketing funnel to build for the consulting firm that I worked at. And so we were building this exactly the way you would expect a consulting firm to build something over a decade ago, which is let's plan for a year, let's spend a lot of money finding the right partner, and then let's hope we built the right thing. But I came into this in the middle of the planning phase and had just moved to San Francisco, was reading about going from 0 to 1 and being a lean startup, and was like, I don't know, what if we did this with Squarespace and YouTube and kind of created a prototype and got feedback from some of our previous clients. And so we ended up building it that way. I made all of the videos myself. I created this sort of hacked together prototype online learning platform. And we ended up building and iterating over a year instead of doing a long contracted kind of waterfall solution. And it ended up being a big success. We got $5 million in funding. We had partners reaching out to us to be our distribution partners. And so it was a huge success. And I ended up getting a promotion. But unfortunately, it was a promotion to a more senior kind of consultant. And at that point, I'd realized, like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to do this other thing I've been doing. What is this called where you build things and you put it on the internet and people tell you what they like and hate, and then you change it based on the feedback that you get from customers? And I found out that was called product management. So that's how I got into product management. And then I had kind of a career in product management where I worked at some big companies and I worked at some small companies. And then a couple of years ago, I found myself unexpectedly taking a break and not really sure if I wanted to stay in tech. This was right before kind of the huge AI boom where ChatGPT came out, and we saw like now I think we're in one of the most innovative and creative moments that tech has ever had. But right before that, if you can remember, it was pretty boring. And I just left Twitter. I was like, should I stay in social? Oh God, I don't want to stay in social. But what other interesting things are happening in tech right now? So I kind of took a break and did what you do when you have no idea what you're doing with your life in San Francisco. And, and I started a podcast. And so I started a podcast with my friend Emma. It was just like a silly watching a TV show kind of podcast. And I went to go edit it and I found Descript. And as soon as I started using Descript, I was like, oh, this is what I need to go do next. This is why I got into product management. This is the kind of magic that I want to build. Editing a video, just like editing a document, blew my mind. And it kind of did what all great products do, where they don't just solve a problem for you, they kind of change the way that you see yourself. And so for me, a really big part of my journey with Descript was it made me feel like I could be a creative person. And I had never really been creative before. I'd always built docs and decks, but suddenly I was a video editor. And yeah, it was just so much fun. I reached out cold and I asked if they were hiring product people and became the VP of product. And then a couple years later, here I am, the CEO. So had kind of this fun from customer to CEO journey over the last 3 years.
Wow, what a story to end up in the seat that you are in now. But that's amazing. It was a light bulb moment for you after using the platform itself.
Yeah, I think I'm one of these people that can really only work on a product that I myself am in love with, right? If you think about the kind of work that it takes, even to be a VP of product, but certainly to be a CEO, look, there are some people who can do it because I don't the thrill of the chase or their love of being like top dog. But for me, it all comes back to the deep emotional connection that I have with the product that we're building and with the customers who use it.
Touching on finding that passion and loving what you do now and the company that you work for and what it backs. Let's talk about that a little bit. So you're in the CEO role. There is a culture, there is a vision that you're backing. How does that look like for you, keeping that culture alive and having everybody align with that vision?
Yeah, so I mean the culture needed to change when we shifted from being a founder-led company to a CEO-led company. There is something about a founder where they're almost a little bit like a messiah character or a king. They have this incredible charisma and they have a very strong vision and they sort of just compel people to follow that vision. And that's part of the magic of the founder, right? And that's how they are able to start with nothing and recruit a team and build it all themselves. And there's usually just this incredible charisma and like will to power that you see in your typical founder. And sometimes it totally explodes and they become insane. Luckily that was not the case here. But in any case, anytime you're at a founder-led company, you'll see that the culture is the founder's personality and the vision is whatever the founder's vision is. And it really feels like a monarchy or like a cult. And that can be kind of fun, honestly. A CEO is less likely to have a cult following or to rule by fiat the way that like a king would. And so actually the way that I've tried to reorient our culture is like we aren't changing from being founder led to, everyone swear your devotion to me, Laura, your CEO. But I'm actually trying to turn us from being founder led to being customer obsessed. I think that like what the North Star needs to be in a world where you are not a founder led company needs to be a shared vision that the entire company has for who the customer is, what their pain points are, what they're trying to achieve, and how we can help them get there. And so that's the main cultural shift that I've been trying to lead since becoming the CEO in August.
Amazing. And I mean, very much so give first approach and take the feedback and run with it. Change whatever you need to change and scale that way. So, was that always your approach coming into this, or was this something that kind of spoke to you almost like the light bulb moment when you knew you wanted to work with the company? How did that look like?
I think that being customer obsessed, my first PM job was at Amazon, and that is a company that is very customer obsessed. And it's really in their DNA. And we've read about some of the rituals where that shows up, but I think they're more important than ever because right now we're sort of in this world with AI where the technology is developing so fast that often we have people in the driver's seat that are starting with the technology and asking like, what can it do? And then sort of like taping together the product that lets the technology do what it's going to do. And in my opinion, that is not good product craft. What you want to do is start with the problem and then ask, how can technology serve that customer? And so I think like, for example, when you write a feature, writing even just like a couple paragraphs of what is the expected customer feedback that you will get from this? What is the from to story? What is the press release, right? The Amazon customer press release for this feature that would prove to you that you've had the impact that you want to have. And I think, yeah, so that is kind of in my DNA as just a way of working. Now, then you have to adapt that kind of value to the moment that we're in right now and to the customer that we have. And actually, Descript has really different customers. You can kind of plot them on a 2 by 2 according to their like AI sophistication and their video editing sophistication. So Descript has always had this ambition to be able to serve both total neophytes, people that really have never edited video before, and make things just dead simple for them, while still being a robust, reliable, kind of deep enough editor that someone with some real editing chops can have a great time in there too. And that actually what we see is often once we're in companies, like the entire team is in there, right? You've got your video editor in there, you've got the PMM or the person with the story is in there, the reporter's in there. You've got Steve from legal in there being like, please do not use this person's last name when you publish this in the comments. And so it can be like this collaborative place where everyone, no matter what their video editing fluency is, can be in there helping to create this video. But now we have to add on this whole new spectrum of like, okay, you have some people who are AI experts. They love to pick the model that they're going to use. They expect to be able to, use us with the same amount of sophistication as they would use like a product that comes from Frontier Labs. And then you have someone else who's just like, please never show me a model picker. I don't care and never want to know what the difference between Sonnet 4.5 and Gemini Flash 2.5 are. I don't care. And we have to build for that customer too. And we expect that the mix shift of these customers is going to change over time. So customer obsessed can seem very simple, but there's a lot of nuance to the different circumstances and traits that our customers bring to Descript.
So these internal systems that were brought, into Descript, it's very versatile, right? Like you mentioned, very user friendly on one hand, and then somebody who's very much so, this is their expertise. There's a wide range of customer base for that. With these internal systems, there's a lot of competition out there. Was that one of the biggest tools to keep the business and allow it to scale without breaking, like some of these other software companies that aren't able to sustain themselves and scale like you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Descript wins because we have the best product. We do. And I think it is because we aren't interested in building an editor that, yes, works for simple use cases, but is like 1 inch deep. So as soon as you want to do something that's not exactly the one workflow that we've optimized for, you're kind of SOL. I think that's how a lot of kind of newer point solutions tend to work, where they work very nice and they're very simple as long as you follow exactly their cookie cutter formula. But then as soon as you're like, oh, I kind of want to do something a little bit different, or I have my own opinion of how I want this transition to work, or I want to get into the timeline and change something to make it perfect, it's like, well, you can't. You kind of like get what you get and you don't get upset, is how a lot of kind of newer point solutions work. And then I think how a lot of like the older timeline editors work is, you need to get a PhD in that piece of software before you're able to use it. And so I still think that like Descript, more than any other product out there, is simple enough that like I say, like, simple enough that my mom can use it, and robust enough that my head of design uses it to make just like the most beautiful videos that I could never make. When I put his videos next to my videos, I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just have taste, Laura. So taste can get you pretty far too. So I do think like that's what differentiates us, is our ability to meet both of those types of editors and say, great, we can make you a video editor and you can get it done way faster than you've ever been able to do it. And that's a promise that I think a lot of our competitors make and like they just don't fulfill. And so it's the kind of thing where when you're talking to someone who's never used it before and they're only looking at a website, they're like, I don't know, kind of looks like there are a lot of other products out there that do that. And I say, try them. Take the Pepsi challenge, and I think you'll choose Descript.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your position. You're in the role and you have to make those strategic decisions. How do you approach that, knowing the future outcomes? They may be good, they may be bad. I want to know your approach to making kind of these bigger decisions as a CEO.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the biggest differences, I think, between being the VP of product and being the CEO. When you're in product, you make decisions all the time. It's like the same level of important decisions, but the feedback cycle is so much faster. You launch a product and people either like it or they don't. And they tell you what they don't like about it. You launch a new feature and you look at adoption and you look at retention, and usually within 4 to 6 weeks, I mean, often faster, but like really like after novelty effect is over and everything, you can understand, like, did I change the customer's workflow for the better, or did I not? And it can be very data oriented in the way that you understand the success of a feature, and that data and that feedback loop is just super tight. And so you have all of these different inputs all the time letting you know, like, am I on the right track? And when you're the CEO, the decisions that you're making are often on a much longer time horizon. And so you really don't know if the strategy that you've laid out is working until, you've spent at least a couple of quarters working in that direction. And wow, that's a long feedback cycle in, one of the most disruptive moments in our industry. And I think there's something that is fundamentally dissatisfying about that. And so you ask, like, okay, well, how do you make those decisions given that kind of complexity? I think it's a combination of knowing your customer, knowing your market, having already seen all of the data and you're not learning it all for the first time, kind of developing that gut. Hidden in that gut, when people say that they're making a gut level decision, often there is like a data driven calculus to what their gut is telling them. And a lot of your early career is really just building that gut, just building the at bats and the pattern recognition to be able to have a really good sense of what you think is happening. And then it's also surrounding yourself with people who have different kinds of expertise and who do not always agree with each other and who do not always agree with you, so that you can hear a variety of ideas and engage in lively debate and do things like play the devil's advocate or play out different scenarios. And so lively debate is a really important way for how I get to hypothesis or truth or clarity. And then, we kind of say, like, this is the decision. We're writing it out. And now, like, let's learn over time. And that's how you continue to develop that gut and get smarter. And then I think once you have a decision, you just need to live with it. I think that one of the things that um, some leaders do that I think is a failure mode is they just waffle. They say that something is important, but it's not reflected in how they actually prioritize. They aren't willing to make the hard trade offs to really give that strategy a shot. And so you actually don't learn anything. And meanwhile, you've waffled between 2 to 3 strategies. So to me, that's really the failure mode that I try to stay away from at the CEO level. And, is that in some moments a big and, I don't know, is there fear there? Sometimes there is, but I think that's something that by the time you're in this seat, you've already made a lot of decisions like that before.
Find comfort in difficult decisions at some point going through them, right?
Oh yeah.
And I guess, like you mentioned, it really helps be consumed and it be part of you in a sense. You speak, you breathe the company's culture, the vision, and you're excited. It's part of your purpose. And that's so important because there's so much success that can come from that, right? If it's something that you're working in your 9 to 5 and you really don't agree with the way things are going and it's becoming miserable, you feel forced in a way to be in that position that you're in. You're really not putting the best amount of output that you can, right? The potential is it's not there. So it really sounds like it's coming from your heart, your gut, and everything in between, right?
I think that's right. I think that, I sort of only like to work for leaders that I think are to some extent mission driven. And that's certainly who I am and how I show up in this job. And I think that that's how so many of the people who work at Descript show up in this job, right? Where we're not always thinking about the mathematics of like where Descript is going as a business, that we need to keep that in our heads at all times. Like, we're here because we deeply love this product and our customers and the things that we enable in the creativity space. Our mission is to help put things in the world that otherwise wouldn't exist and probably should. And when I think about like the customer podcasts that go on, I think about like, wow, this is all creativity and conversation and thought that Descript is helping people put out into the world. We're helping people tell their stories. And that is something that I feel mission driven to do every day.
Founders that are trying to build something today, what should they be doing earlier if they want real leverage, whether it's scaling, selling, or acquiring later on? I mean, with that leadership mindset, what's your advice on that?
I don't know that I have great generalizable advice, but I think like if I were going to found something tomorrow, and also like let it be known, like I am not a founder. And so I have this sort of like reverence for the founder because it's something that I have not yet done. Though I now feel like it's the only job that I will ever do after this job. If there's another job for me after being the CEO of Descript, I think it will be to found something myself because I've definitely been bitten by the bug. And yeah, but I think that if I were going to found something right now, first of all, I would found something that I myself would love to do. I wouldn't do one of these cynical founding jobs where you try to find a hole in the market and like fill it and make cash quick and get out. Some people certainly are very successful in that, and I wish them luck. I'm just saying that I don't believe you can time the market. I don't think I could build a good product for a customer that I don't understand, don't to some degree relate to myself. And so if I were going to found something today or tomorrow, it would be to solve a problem that I have that I would pay money to solve. Because this is like you can go too far in the other direction and be like, yeah, just build for yourself, follow your passion. But like put on your skeptical hat and say, like, yeah, it'd be nice to have another grocery store app, but like would I ever pay for a grocery store app on the app store? Would I just use ChatGPT? And so you have to like inhabit both of those spaces. But like what is a real problem that I have that feels intractable, and like how could I start to think about solving that? And then I try to get real users as soon as possible. Just like friends, but friends who I know have that real problem, and see if I can start to solve it for them and see if they start to get excited. Try it for a little while, see if I've got something. If I don't, pivot and try something else. But I think that's like the combination of like, do I love this enough? Am I interested enough in this problem that I will stick with it through the hard times? Because there are gonna be hard times whenever you found. And then like, is there really a business here? Will people really spend money on it? And I think like one of the things that I've had to think about a lot in becoming the CEO of Descript at the stage that I'm at is like you don't just want to ask like, okay, is this like a $1 million business? But if you want to get if you're going to go the VC route, you need to kind of already have a few ideas in your head of like, how does this become a $1 billion business, a $10 billion business? Or I actually think like a route that a lot of founders are taking now that I think will be much more common in this world of AI is bootstrapping. It's so much easier to bootstrap your first million in ARR than it's ever been. And so that might be the route that I take the next time around is like bootstrap my first million, decide if I want to, get some investors to, increase the size of my business. But I think it's easier than ever to sort of bootstrap a business, make a pretty decent profit, and really like be your only employee for a while. So that's an interesting kind of business route that I think isn't talked enough about.
Yeah. I mean, especially in this space, right? It's very common in construction. A lot of contractors, that's what they do. They bootstrap, they work for themselves, maybe one helper beside them, and they do that sometimes until the day that they retire and call it quits. But I mean, I guess in this space, it's not as common.
More and more, depending on the product, I think with a product as complicated as Descript, where you have to like store, manipulate, process media, like that's not going to be you're not going to be able to do that on your own. At least like not right now. But who knows where we'll be in 5, 10 years. But for a lot of things that used to require a 50-person team, I think you really can do that with just a couple of people these days, at least for the first all the way through what might traditionally be like your Series A.
Yeah, no, absolutely. AI right now is replacing a lot of easy and repeatable tasks, right? Now, for you as a CEO, let's kind of touch on that topic, AI. What kind of tools are you using in the role that really help you out in your day to day?
I mean, I've been completely like Claude pilled. So I use Claude Code, although I'm considering moving to Claude Workspaces because, like, really, I shouldn't be messing around with the terminal. But I have hooked it into all of my different apps and I use it to keep myself organized. So I use Notion to record all of my meetings, and all of the notes for all of my meetings that I'm in are stored there. And then I also have all of the documents that I've written, all of the Slack messages that I've sent. I have my calendar is an input, my email is an input, and then a bunch of context that I've given Claude about our company strategy and about what we're making and about what our aspirations are is all in there. And then I've just created a whole bunch of skills for the different things that I need to do every single day. And so that has become kind of like my operating system for where I get work done. Now, I'm an early adopter and I'm not like totally retained to any surface yet. So every time kind of a new productivity setup comes out, I like to try it out, but that's the one that's winning for me so far.
Great. And for somebody who's in that CEO chair, can you talk about leadership? Because leadership is a skill, and a lot of people have trouble honing in and practicing that skill. And sometimes when they get put into these roles, they bite off a lot more than they can chew, and they don't realize that that's something that they really need to practice and hone in on. So, what advice do you have for somebody that maybe is struggling with the leadership aspect?
Well, I think like the first thing I'd ask is if they want to be a leader, right? This is one of the things that, especially like earlier in my career, I used to encounter a lot where people were just terrible managers. And you would kind of interrogate like what's going on here? Like why is this person such a bad manager? And the root cause is just like this person doesn't give a shit about managing people. They don't care about people. They don't care about this team. And so it's like, well, why did they try so hard to become a manager? And it's like, oh, well, they wanted the power. And I think like there are a lot of ways to have power in an organization without being a leader. And if you don't like being a leader, like go have one of those like, high power, low management, low charisma, low leader, low vision roles, which, go be a chief architect or go be one of these roles that's like high up, has no reports, and you kind of like whisper into the CEO's ear and you have a lot of influence, and your power comes from your influence, not from the fact that you have this big team under you. But if you're someone who has a big team under you, then to be a leader, okay, you need to be an S tier vision haver, but more importantly, like an S tier vision communicator. You need to be a storyteller who cares that every person at your organization understands the story and is inspired by the story. So much of being a leader is that. And then being a leader is like deeply caring about the people on your team and about your customers and letting that care show up in all of the things that you do and the decisions that you make and the way that you explain those decisions. And I think like, oh my God, it's a hard job. And that's why it's like the first thing that I would say if someone's like, oh my God, being a leader is so hard. What advice do you have for me? It's like, do you love it? If you don't love it, why are you doing it? It's too hard a job to do if you don't really want to be a leader in all of its facets.
Well, that's great advice. It seems like it does come natural out of you, your charisma. It does show itself in you. It is evident that you seem to be a great leader. Laura, I appreciate you coming on the show and giving us your insight.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody knows the secret now. If you have Descript, please reach out to Laura. She'll give you some time.
Yes, reach out. I will be on your podcast. We'll plaster the internet with my face together.